I wanted to surprise him. Just a quiet dinner. His favorite wine, candles lit, music low, everything perfect like it used to be. I even reheated the stew he always said reminded him of home. The house felt unusually quiet when I walked in. Still. Too still. My heels tapped softly on the floor as I made my way to the bedroom, heart fluttering with this tiny, stupid hope that maybe we were still okay. And then I opened the door, and my world stopped. I didn't scream at first. My body just locked in place. My mind couldn't keep up with what my eyes were seeing. My husband, Eric, in our bed. With her. The same bed I'd made that morning. The scent of lavender still lingered in the air, mixing now with sweat and betrayal. My mouth went dry. I could hear my own heartbeat, loud and hollow. And then, everything inside me just snapped. I don't remember what I said, only how I felt, like something had been ripped out of me, raw and permanent. I was shaking, sobbing, barely able to breathe. I wanted him to hurt. I needed him to regret. But when I looked into his eyes, there was nothing. No guilt, no fear, just that cold voice. I'm just tired of you. Honestly, I never even loved you. And in that moment, something inside me died, and something else started to wake up. His words didn't just hurt, they shattered me, like I was some inconvenience he'd tolerated for too long. Never loved you? After all the years, the nights I stayed up waiting, the birthdays I planned down to the last detail? My chest felt tight, like I'd been punched. I wanted to scream until the walls cracked. Instead, I stood there, trembling, surrounded by broken trust and twisted sheets that weren't mine anymore. I don't know how I managed to grab my things. My vision was blurry from the tears, hot, relentless tears that burned like acid. I remember yanking clothes from drawers, barely noticing what I stuffed into the suitcase. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my keys twice. And still, he just sat there, watching me, like he'd been waiting for this moment. No apology, no shame, just that cold, empty face. As I stepped out the front door, a rush of cold air hit my skin. But it was nothing compared to the chill that had taken over my heart. The night swallowed me whole. I didn't have a plan or a destination. I just knew I had to get away. From him. From that house. From everything that used to feel like home, but now felt like a cruel joke. I drove with no music, no lights, just the sound of my own sobs filling the silence like sirens in the dark. I ended up parked outside my friend Julia's apartment at nearly midnight, sitting in my car for what felt like hours before I could knock. My face was swollen, my mascara a mess, my hands still trembling. When she opened the door and saw me, she didn't ask questions, just pulled me into a hug so tight it cracked something inside me open again. I broke down in her arms like a child, because for the first time that night, I felt safe enough to fall apart. Julia made me tea, though I barely touched it. We sat on her couch, and I stared at nothing. I couldn't stop replaying it all. His voice, that woman's laugh, the sheets. God, the sheets. I kept asking myself how long he'd felt that way. Had every kiss been fake? Every "I love you" a lie? It was like every memory I'd built with him had turned to ash. I didn't recognize my life anymore. I didn't recognize myself. I fell asleep that night on Julia's couch, still in my clothes, clutching a pillow like it could keep me from falling apart again. Somewhere between the sobbing and the silence, a thought crept in. Quiet, almost whispering. If he never loved me, what was I even holding on to all these years? That question would haunt me for days, but eventually, it would also be the beginning of something I didn't expect. The days blurred together after that. I barely left Julia's apartment, barely spoke, just existed. Some mornings I'd wake up and for a second I'd forgotten. Then it would all rush back like a tidal wave. The betrayal. His voice. That cold sentence that tore through everything I thought I knew. I'd lie there, frozen, staring at the ceiling, asking myself how I ended up here. discarded like an old coat he didn't want anymore. I cried in the shower so she wouldn't hear me. I cried at night when the house was quiet and the weight of what I'd lost became too heavy to hold. But more than anything, I questioned myself. Was I not enough? Too much? Did I push him away? I replayed every fight, every moment I doubted my instincts but chose to love him harder anyway. I remembered the birthdays he forgot, the dinners he skipped, the way he made me feel invisible. And still, I stayed. There was this one moment. I was standing at Julia's kitchen sink, scrubbing a mug I hadn't even used, and I caught my reflection in the window. I didn't recognize her. Hair a mess, eyes dull, skin pale. I thought, is this who I am now? A ghost in someone else's life? That night, I didn't cry. For the first time, I just sat with it. The silence, the pain, the raw truth that I had given everything to someone who never deserved any of it. I started writing things down, not for anyone else, just for me. Scraps of thoughts, little pieces of heartbreak, memories I couldn't let go of yet. Like the time I sat in traffic for 2 hours to bring him his favorite takeout when he had a bad day, and he barely looked up from his phone. Or how I missed my father's birthday dinner to support him at a work event, only to be introduced as just Bella. Those moments I buried for years came flooding back, sharper now, undeniable. And somewhere in the middle of that emotional wreckage, something inside me stirred. A quiet voice, tired but fierce, said, "You gave love. Real love. Selfless, loyal, imperfect love. And if he couldn't see that, if he never even felt it, that was his flaw, not mine." I kept repeating those words like a prayer, trying to believe them, because I was exhausted from blaming myself for someone else's emptiness. Then came the shift. Not a loud, triumphant one, but a subtle turning of the tide. The crying slowed. My breathing steadied. I still hurt. God, I still hurt. But that sharp edge of grief started to dull. And in that soft, unfamiliar space, I felt something new. Resolve. If he never loved me, then he never gets to know what it feels like to be loved by me again. That became my anchor, my promise to myself, and from that day forward, I stopped waiting to feel better and started choosing it. I started small. A walk around the block, a warm bath with music playing low, folding clean laundry while the sun came through the window just right. I wasn't trying to become a new person overnight. I just wanted to remember what it felt like to care about myself, even if only in fragments. And strangely, it felt good to choose myself in ways I had forgotten. Not for show, not for him, just for me. Some nights, the sadness still crept in, whispering doubts and regrets into my ears like old ghosts. But now I spoke back. I'd whisper, "You survived worse. You're still here." And each time I did, that voice inside me, the one he tried to silence, grew a little louder, a little stronger. I stopped needing his apology. I stopped needing him to feel guilt, because I had finally realized my healing wasn't about him. It never was. And so, I made a quiet decision. I wouldn't scream, beg, or seek revenge in the ways he'd expect. No, I'd do something far more powerful. I'd become unreachable, unavailable, untouched by his regret. I'd turn my silence into strength, because if he truly never loved me, then he would never deserve to see what love looked like when it rose from the ashes. Weeks passed. The air felt different, lighter. I wasn't fully healed. Healing doesn't come with a finish line. But I was moving. I found a part-time gig at a cozy flower shop near Julia's. There was something grounding about it. Hands in soil, the smell of fresh blooms, arranging beauty from chaos. Every day I chose to keep going, even when it still ached inside. And slowly, those cracks in me started to glow instead of bleed. Therapy helped too. At first, I sat stiff in that chair, arms crossed, unsure what to say. But over time, I let go. I cried. I laughed at things that weren't funny. I told the truth out loud. And in those sessions, I found pieces of myself I thought Eric had broken for good. The kind, fierce, curious woman I used to be, she was still in there. She had just been buried under years of emotional starvation and second-guessing. That's when the text started. At first, just one. Hey. Then another, 2 days later. I miss you. And then the flood. Paragraphs. Apologies. Memories he suddenly claimed to cherish. I didn't know what I had. I made a mistake. You're the only one who ever truly loved me. I read every word and felt nothing. Not rage, not heartbreak. Just a deep, echoing silence inside me. And that silence was louder than any scream I could have given him. I never replied, not once, not even a dot. And that, my silence, seemed to torment him more than any words ever could. He tried calling. Late at night, early morning, even from a different number once. But I let every ring echo into nothing. Because I wasn't the same woman who once begged for his attention, who once lowered her voice just to keep the peace. I had no more peace to give to him. I started posting little snapshots of my days, not to show off, but to remind myself that life was still happening. Me with a fresh haircut, a coffee date with Julia. A sunrise from the balcony with a caption that simply said, "Still standing. Nothing flashy, nothing loud." But I knew he saw it. He was still watching. And that quiet awareness made each post feel like a whispered truth. Look what you lost. And look who I found. Me. It was strange, how silence could be so full. It held everything, my strength, my clarity, my worth. I wasn't hiding. I just wasn't inviting him back in. Not into my inbox, not into my mind, and definitely not into my life. I had no intention of offering closure. He had burned that bridge himself. And the beauty of it all? I didn't need revenge to feel powerful. I just needed him to hear the one thing I'd never say again. One night, I saw his name light up my phone again. I watched it ring. I could almost hear the desperation behind it. But I just placed the phone face down on the table and kept sipping my tea. That simple act felt like a ceremony, a declaration. I wasn't avoiding him because I was angry. I was above the conversation altogether. There was nothing left to explain, nothing left to fix. He was a chapter I had finally stopped rereading. Strangely, people started noticing. "You look different," Julia said one morning as we folded laundry. "Like, lighter." I smiled, not because everything was perfect, but because for the first time in forever, I felt whole without needing anyone else to fill in the gaps. I wasn't trying to prove a point to Eric anymore. I was just living in a way that honored the woman I was becoming. And that was louder than any message I could have sent him. What he didn't know, what he would never get to know, was that while he was chasing ghosts of what he'd broken, I was building something real. Not just a new life, but a new sense of self. And soon, in the most unexpected way, life would bring me something I thought I'd lost for good. The kind of love I once believed only existed in other people's stories. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, of all days. I wasn't looking for anything, just browsing a cozy little bookstore tucked between a bakery and a flower shop. I had a coffee in one hand and a novel in the other when I heard someone chuckle softly behind me. "Good choice," he said, nodding at the book. I turned around and met the eyes of a man who didn't look through me, but into me. His name was Liam. There was no spark, no fireworks, just ease. The kind you don't notice until it wraps around you like a soft sweater. We chatted for a while, about books, music, and somehow life. There was no pressure, no hidden agenda, just two people connecting over simple things. When he asked if I wanted to join him for tea next door, I hesitated. Not because I wasn't interested, but because I was scared of what softness might feel like again. But I said yes. And in that moment, something small shifted. Not loud like the pain had been, but quiet, hopeful. A soft nudge from life, telling me that maybe, just maybe, love wasn't something to fear anymore. Not the kind that drains you, but the kind that lets you be. I didn't know it then, but saying yes to that cup of tea was saying yes to a different kind of story. Tea turned into more conversations, and those conversations turned into long walks, quiet dinners, and late-night texts that weren't about need, but about curiosity, laughter, and comfort. Liam never tried to impress me. He didn't chase or perform. He listened. He remembered the little things, like how I always added cinnamon to my coffee, or how I couldn't fall asleep unless I read a few pages of a book. He made space for me to just be. At first, I kept waiting for the catch, for the shift. For the moment he'd pull away, or turn cold like Eric used to. But it never came. When I pulled back, Liam leaned in gently, without pressure. When I admitted my fears, he didn't flinch. He didn't try to fix me. He just stayed, present, patient, real. And little by little, I stopped looking for red flags in his kindness. I started believing it could actually be genuine. One night, as we sat on a park bench under the kind of sky that makes you feel small in the best way, he reached for my hand. Not with urgency, not with possession, just with warmth. And I let him. I looked at him, not as a replacement or a distraction, but as a man who saw me not as broken, but as whole. It was then I realized I didn't just feel safe with him, I felt known, and maybe even loved. There was something almost sacred in the way Liam treated my heart, with quiet care, like he understood it had been bruised and wasn't trying to rush its healing. He didn't ask for details about my past, but when I chose to share, he listened without flinching. No judgment. Just that steady gaze that said, "You're safe now." And that safety, it wasn't loud. It didn't ask to be earned. It just existed, like air, constant, essential, unnoticed until it's gone. Meanwhile, I knew Eric was still watching. A like on a post here. A viewed story there. His presence lingering like smoke from a fire long extinguished. He hadn't moved on, at least not really. And the irony wasn't lost on me. The woman he once couldn't be bothered to love was now glowing with a light he no longer had access to. But I didn't post for him. I didn't live to prove a point. I was simply becoming someone he'd never deserved to begin with. And that was the real shift. I no longer measured love by the attention of someone who once ignored me. I measured it by the way Liam looked at me when I was laughing at nothing. By the stillness in my chest when he said he'd call, and actually did. By the way I no longer felt like I had to earn affection through sacrifice. I was no longer surviving someone's love. I was simply living in it. And soon, I'd be reminded that real closure doesn't come through words. It comes through peace. It came on a Wednesday, midday. No warning. Just a message blinking on my screen like a ghost from a past life. Can we at least talk? Eric's name. His last grasp. I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the screen. A year ago, that message would have torn me in half. I would have shaken. I would have cried. But now, I just breathed. Calm. Steady. The only thing I felt was distance. As if his words were meant for someone I no longer was. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I had lived that story already, played every scene, bled through every page, and now I was holding the pen. The power was in the choice. And I chose silence, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. I sat there for a moment, phone still in my hand, and then I deleted the message without flinching. Not out of anger, out of clarity, because I didn't need the last word. I had already written the final chapter. Later that afternoon, Liam and I walked through the park. The breeze was soft. The sun filtered through the trees in golden ribbons. He reached for my hand without saying a word, and I smiled, not because I was trying to show the world I'd moved on, but because I genuinely had. I felt light. I felt still. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. I used to think closure came from a conversation, from hearing the apology, from understanding why someone chose to hurt you. But standing there beside Liam, hand in hand, I realized closure isn't something they give you. It's something you give yourself when you stop needing answers that will never satisfy the wound. Eric's words, his regret, his timing, it all came too late. And even if it hadn't, it wouldn't have mattered. He had already lost the right to access my heart. Because the truth was, I had already won. Not in the way he might measure it, not with revenge or bitterness, but in peace. in love, in choosing myself long before anyone else did. The real victory wasn't making him suffer. It was walking away before I forgot how to love myself. It was finding someone who didn't just say the right things, but lived them. Someone who saw me in all my scars and still thought I was beautiful. We found a bench near the water, and as we sat down, I leaned my head on Liam's shoulder. The world around us moved slowly, gently, and in that moment, I didn't think about Eric. I didn't wonder what he was doing or if he was watching. I didn't care. Because the story of us, Liam and me, wasn't about proving the past wrong. It was about building something real, something soft, something honest. And that was more than a win. That was a beginning. As we walked again, I caught my reflection in a shop window. Same eyes, same face, but different. Stronger, softer. There was no more ache buried in my chest. No more pretending I was okay. I was okay. Not perfect, not untouched by the pain, but whole in a way I never thought I'd be again. Liam squeezed my hand, and I looked at him, not with desperation, but with gratitude. For showing me what love could be, for reminding me that I was never too much, just with the wrong person. Somewhere behind me, Eric might still be searching. For the woman he broke, the version of me who stayed quiet, who swallowed pain to keep peace. But that woman is gone. She grew out of the silence he left her in, and she didn't just survive, she rebuilt, brick by brick with grace and fire. And now she loves, fully, freely, fiercely, not because she needs to be saved, but because she knows she's worth choosing. Final scene. I watched the light dance across the surface of the water as Liam wrapped his arm around me. No tension, no fear, just stillness, just presence. And in that golden moment, I knew. He never loved me, but someone better did. And I finally loved myself enough to choose that.